Hello, everyone. Sorry I'm late again, of course. How's everybody doing? Um, so for today, I kind of have a little bit set up, but I guess not really. I'm going to start right away and just play. It's kind of long, but I'm going to it's all good. The whole video is good, but I'm going to try and skip through some of it so it's not so long. But I'm going to play an interview with Ole Damengard, and I've brought him up in my previous videos before. He is a expert on false flags and conspiracy theories. So I want to play his interview for you guys so you guys can kind of get an idea of what I'm talking about or what I've been talking about, except for coming from a expert. And then it has to do with the Watts case, of course, but then we'll get into the actual Watts case after.
Or why and how did you start researching global conspiracy?
Oh my God, it's been a long road. And for me, I used to work as a journalist when I was really young. It was one of the first jobs I got. And it was a job that taught me one of the things to be curious, also to ask questions and not just talk, but listen instead. But most importantly, was to listen to what was not being said, because people are always talking, especially when they're in power positions. They will tell you stuff, but the question is, what will they leave out? If they have something to hide, they will not talk about it. They will point in other directions. So the years when I was working as a journalist, it really helped me see that, hang on a second, just because you get a press release, that doesn't mean that it's true, because it could be true, but sometimes there are things left out, and that's sometimes where you will find the real truth. On many different levels, it doesn't matter, but in certain circumstances, certain events, and so on, that's where you have to look. What's not being said, that's where you need to start digging. Mm-hmm. And then in around, I think it was 1980, I remember it like it was yesterday. It was the first time I saw the so-called Zapruder film, where there was this bystander who filmed the assassination of the JFK. And it's when I saw the final headshot, I mean, it was so obvious to me. I mean, it's like a 4-year-old, 8-year-old can figure it out like this, that the shots did not come from behind and to the right where they said that the shooter was, Lee Oswald, but it came from the front and to the right because his head was thrown back like this. So anyone with any kind of normal intelligence, not being brain dead or controlled, can right away say the official story doesn't match up. There's something wrong here. And so I was like very confused because you had all of these heavyweight news channels like History Channel, Discovery, all of these that were starting up, ABC, CNN, whatever, I can't remember in those years, but all the heavyweights, mainstream media was saying, Oswald, maybe he was helped by someone else, Oswald, Oswald, Oswald. And I was like, there's something very strange going on here. Either I'm very slow, well,
Yeah.
I mean, I've been very naive. I'm very slow in certain areas, but it turns out that I'm almost like Rain Man in this, when it comes to these things. Uh, so I started trying to figure out what is it I don't understand because apparently, I mean, they're saying it, so it must be true because in those days I trusted media, I trusted the police, I trusted authorities, I trusted the government. I thought, yeah, so what's going on here? And that took me down a road that just changed my whole perspective of seeing things. And I mean, I almost got obsessed with the JFK assassination. This was way before the JFK movie. I mean, like 10, 11 years before. It was way before the internet. So it was hard to get info about, and not very many people were interested, as far
How
as
did you
I'm.
do that?
Sorry.
How did you do that? And where did you get the interest from?
I was in secondhand bookshops, finding old dusty things. I was in libraries. I went to England. I went to the US. I was trying to find different film directors that have done documentaries. I was, but I was hitchhiking. I was like a one. Confused, help me find out what the hell happened because I just had this feeling inside this is important. I did not know it. I just thought it was a murder of a president. I did not see that it was connected with other stuff. So also one of the things that happened was that I read about I think 200 books about the JFK assassination, and in the end, I started writing my own. It was the first book I ever wrote, but it was just for me to try and somehow make a logic sense of the whole thing, and it didn't make sense at all because it was so multi-layered, pointing all different directions. And also what I found very confusing to start with was that, like, for instance, there were talk about one guy, for instance, and he was working for the CIA. In another book, he was being paid by the FBI, and in another, it can't be true. I mean, somebody is wrong here, but all of them were heavyweight researchers. So I I I just had to figure out. So I kept on, and in the end, I understood they were all right. All of them were correct because these agencies and the mafia, organized crime, are in bed with each other. They're totally entangled. It's the same coin, just different. So many of them were working for the mob at times, paid off by the CIA if they were needed them for operations, and FBI and other organizations as well. Mossad, these, it's the same individual. And once I started seeing that, I started like, whoa, something here is interesting because I thought the CIA good guys, FBI good guys, what the hell are they doing with the mob? What are they doing with mass murderers? What are they doing with drive-by shootings and gang violence? And like, it doesn't make sense. They're there to solve the crimes, not be part of them. So then that led me into studying Martin Luther King, that assassination, Robert Kennedy. I had no idea that they were connected at that time. I thought totally separate attacks. Uh, Abraham Lincoln, Julius Caesar. I mean, it took me all the way back to the old Romans because I started seeing very clearly that there was like a bullet point list. I never saw the list in writing, but I started seeing it was following like the same template, like boom, not the exact way they killed the person, which is most of the time triangle fire, multiple shooters, multiple getaway cars, and so on. But when I'm talking about the setup with a patsy and totally innocent individual that was being blamed for it, with an investigation that followed that would never ever find the truth, wouldn't be interested, but were intimidating witnesses, threatening people, pointing to the patsy. It was the official story or nothing. The patsy, the patsy, the patsy, or nothing. And then if they kept doing that for a long time and people in the end got pissed off and said, listen, what you're saying just doesn't make any sense. We want the truth. Then they would appoint a commission, and the commission would then spend about a year doing absolute nothing, except, I tell you, behind closed doors, they're drinking brandy, cognac, throwing darts, coming out unshaven at times saying, we're working really hard, we're working, we will find this. They're not, absolutely not. That will then go on for after 3-4 months, there will be an internal scandal, it's standard, so that they will say, you have used one of our credit cards to buy a dime bar, like a chocolate bar. You have misused our assets, like $4, and then they will replace you, and then a new person will come in and they will say, now we need like 2-3 more months to inform the new person of what we have gone through. It's absolutely, it's a matter of just dragging it out. And after about a year, they will present a stack of papers like this that makes no sense, or no index often, and nothing that has to do with the murder. And it will say about the investigation, well, they did a great job, but they made a mistake here, and here. Now we've done our thing, thank you and goodbye. We've done everything, democracy rules, yay baby, and that's it. Until people start saying again, like, really? I mean, what's up here? And then they will just appoint a new commission that will look into the commission, that will look into the investigation, that will not look into the crime. And then that will drag out for a year. They will leak out to media all kinds of crap, so that normal people will just like, I don't care. I don't want to hear another word about it, even if it's the truth. Like the Palme assassination, the Swedish prime minister, there were 3 commissions following each other. They're almost 4. Drag it out, drag it out, and then in the end, people will just
get tired of it.
Yeah, and then they're off the hook. That's the whole thing. So, and also the patsy, the one that is blamed for it, it's always an alone person, a lone guy. Why alone? Because by law, then there's no conspiracy. Conspiracy actually means breathing together, but it has now taken on a whole new level where it's a matter of if 2 or more people are involved with planning criminal activity or doing it. That is a conspiracy. So if there's one person only, then by law, and if that person is then suicided or killed on location, thank you. And crazy, they always want them crazy, or fanatics. Why? Because if you're crazy, there's no need for a motive. He was crazy. He just went out and shot him. What can you do? It's so sad. Now we don't have a prime minister. And then bring in their own guy and Bob's your uncle, and no one notices. So this setup was created by the old Romans and have been used so many times, over and over again. So I started becoming aware of these things, and I saw that, oh my God, JFK, Robert Kennedy, and I started finding the same people involved that were on location in both these assassinations. Then Martin Luther King as well, same people. I was like, are you kidding me? And Malcolm X, not the exact setup, but the same power structure behind it. And also the more I learned about the JFK assassination, when I saw the direction that things took after that, because that was a global coup d'etat almost, by this death machine that took over, really took a massive step forward there. And the reason why these assassinations are so important is because the people that carried them out, these power structures, are still in place. That is the thing. Otherwise, if Kennedy was just a president, nice guy, boom, dead, okay, it was very sad, he was a nice guy, thank you, let's move on. But here we have a totally different setup where bang, in Dealey Plaza, And suddenly the whole world goes like this. Everything started after that. You have the whole escalating thing with the Vietnam War. The CIA goes berserk in totally all kinds of different directions. You have a whole load of the military coups in South America. You have the whole drug trading thing, because that was what the Vietnam War was about. To get the drugs from the Golden Triangle into the West. How to get that? Start a war. So they took over a war from France. France was like, we've had it, we're out. So America just moved in, sent all of these advisors, as they call them, and America hadn't even joined the Vietnam War when JFK was killed. They had some advisors there, but he was saying, we're going to pull out. Not good news for these dark ones. Then after when I started after a few years to see that there was this pattern, I was like, how could they really be connected, these things? And I started seeing more and more clearly, yeah, even the same people are turning up in the background, on the street level, pulling the strings, being part of the commissions. What they do is, I don't know what you call that in English, or rocket with chess. You just go and then you move. No, but it's like, this is democracy. This is democracy. It's the same thing as they just moved. Okay, so in one commission, he's the chairman or the head of the commission. Then we got the submarine commission or whatever. They just do like this, boom, boom, and democracy. Thank God we've got honest people and the authorities. We can trust them. A new one, a new commission. They just changed the name, and they love these beautiful names like the Truth and Harmony Commission, or the Stardust and Freedom Commission, whatever. All of it part of a psyop to make you think that something is actually going on, when actually this is what's going on. Bring in the prostitutes. We'll come out after 2 more months or something like that. It's awful. It's so super corrupt. And it's very, very important to understand when you start seeing the setup that the investigation part of the crime, meaning that when these things happen, the people that step forward and are there doing press conferences, they are part of it. This is the wonderful thing. When you start seeing it, you will see, thank you very much. One stepping out of the shadows, got you. Next one, bring it on. What's your name? Thank you. There's another one for you. And then you have the people that take over, because it's always somebody gets killed or taken out. What happens then? Somebody takes over. Who is that person? That's another one. Thank you. And who is he backing? Who's backing him? Coming up. Okay, thank you. And tick, tick, tick. So you can start seeing these things, and then you see same people. My God. The same setup. And that's when at least I started seeing that the FBI, for instance, I call them fraud, bribery, and intimidation. That's what FBI stands for. Not saying about everyone, but my God, that is one corrupt institution. And what their task is to cover the whole thing up. The FBI moves in, they're the one setting up, if it's an attack or an alleged terror attack, or they will be the ones that have equipped the patsies, trained them, financed them, whatever. And these patsies have no idea that they're being set up often. They think it's a film take or like a film shoot or a joke or a prank or whatever, and suddenly they're right in the middle of it. You did it. And then afterwards, FBI goes in and they just clear the whole thing. They confiscate all cameras, they confiscate all real evidence, and then they plant fake evidence pointing towards the patsy. That's FBI for you. If I can comment them, this is what I think. That's a golden finger, and here's another one. So the FBI, the CIA, that's
the same thing.
So it's the CIA, is the cocaine import agency, but for hire. It's an agency for hire. You can hire them. So if you're some kind of businessman, like one of these big institutions that just we want bananas and we want them cheap. Okay, let's make a military coup in that country where the bananas grow. So we just hire the CIA. They go in with their task. They create a military coup. They take over, and they get the whole thing. It's always normal people that are paying, that are turning into slaves and so on. They often they create mass murders as well. So very, very brutal, very, very brutal. So anyway, I come and I go. So in 1986, when that was after 6 years that I've been really digging into this, the Swedish Prime Minister is said to have been murdered in the streets of Stockholm. Olof Palme was his name. And I thought, I did not like the guy at all. He was an arrogant, speaking down to people, officially a man of the people, taking care of the poor and really caring. Absolutely not. That was not. We were talking about before here when I came to the studio, when my only security is I look in people's eyes, I look in your eyes, I feel, yeah. I look in somebody else's, not because you could be somebody that really want me bad, to hurt me. I've been threatened. I've had attacks on me. I've had people murdered around me. So I'm a one-man band with a small little team around me. So I need to. The only protection I have is my heart and feeling.
Your intuition.
Yeah, because I'm in a minefield. So around the Olof Palme assassination, like I said, I did not like him at all. And but I lived in Sweden. I mean, I moved to Sweden when I was a kid, and I thought, well, sad for his family that he died. I will not miss him. But otherwise than that, thank God we're in Sweden. I can trust the police. The investigation will for sure be very efficient because Sweden is efficient, officially. And that's it. And then I started seeing the exact same template moving. And I was like, you must be shitting me. Excuse my language, but I mean, it felt to me like somebody pulled the carpet under my feet because, like, how is this possible that it's starting to follow the exact same template as assassinations on the other side of the ocean, other countries, other continents, because I started seeing these so many different places in all the way back to the Romans and so on. How is that possible if they're not somehow connected? So I was like, I mean, I'm getting paranoid here, because no. And then I saw, like for instance, it was 23 years after the JFK assassination. So I had all of these bullets there, and then Robert Kennedy, the same ones, doop, 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 Martin Luther King, boop, 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 Malcolm X, boop, 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 Abraham Lincoln, they did that there as well. So I was like, okay, and if I'm right here, then, and I just checked the list, I saw what was going on in Sweden, then the next one would be this. 2 weeks later, it happened in Sweden. It blew my mind because suddenly I was living in a country that was not the country I believed. I just felt I have been taken for a ride here on a level that I can't even imagine. I grew up with Pippi Longstocking and like the Swedish Prime Minister on a bicycle without bodyguards. Oh, Sweden is so wonderful. It's a white island in the world, democracy. All the rest of the world is corrupt and bad, but Sweden. And then suddenly this happened. I was deeply shocked. I really was, because it shook me in my core. Because someone was like, how is this? I mean, how could this happen here? And why is nobody reacting? So suddenly I was in the whole dark entanglement of rotten conspiracy smell coming out of this country where
you were living.
Where I was living, and I was felt. So I must try this life to see for myself what has happened in this country, because suddenly I don't have to go 50,000 kilometers on the other side of the world. I am right in it. So I moved up there, and it was I many times I felt that I'm somehow guided. I'm not religious as such, but I sure feel that sometimes the coincidences are just like divine synchronicity. And so even when driving up to Stockholm, the guy that drove me up there, a friend of mine, he got a phone call saying, "Would you like to come to a party?" Let's go to the party. I mean, I didn't know anyone in Stockholm, so yeah, for sure. We went there, and while we were there, I noticed that there was a girl sitting crying in the kitchen. So I just went up to her and said, "How's it going? You know, are you okay?" And turned out she was a witness to the assassination that had been harassed by the police. That was why she was crying. What are the chances, you know? And there were several of these when I bumped into people that were in key locations around this whole thing. So I just felt like I was being guided into this dark. It gets very dark when you get into these areas. And also there was a group in Sweden called the Private Investigators, which was just a group of normal, ordinary people, former lawyers, police officers, dentists, you know, mostly old guys that were very concerned about what was going on in Sweden, because not a lot of people knew the whole truth to this very day. It's a super complex operation, the biggest murder investigation in the world, the most expensive one. They've used more than 2 billion Swedish krona. That's a billion. Do you know how many zeros that is? That is a lot. That could have been used to something else than just cover up an assassination. So anyway, so I got involved with these people, and they were being harassed. We were being made jokes of in media. Everybody was laughing at it. I could not care less. So what I did was, at that point, no one knew about me. I was Mr. Nobody, the shadow man, whatever. And so what I did was, there were all of these people that had already spent several years looking into this one, and had filled whole rooms with documents and reports and you name it, books and whatever.
How did you find them? Just
I don't know.
coincidence also?
Yeah, something like that. I heard, I think somewhere, someone saying, and I met one of them, and he took me to one of these meetings. And I mean, these guys, some of them, I tell you, if I say colorful, that's an understatement, because some of them were real tinfoil hats. You know, you could see it like, really, what are you doing here? But other people were very, very serious. It was just a small little group, and also I was like, why are you making so much fun of these people? They're really trying, and no ordinary journalists are doing absolute zero. Why are you not encouraging them, or say applauding them for at least somebody's trying? So I felt the same. Somebody's trying to stop this. So what I did was I spent so many days and hours with them. I was driving bus, then I went straight home to one of them, and I went through all of the papers in every single home I went, all of them, taking photocopies, I mean, thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of pages of documents and all of it, because these people had, most of them were very passionate about one part and another part and another part. So it was only when I started putting it together, with also my experience seeing with JFK, Robert Kennedy, Martin Luther King, that was what made me different to them, because they were like staring at the blood like this. This is a Swedish murder. Where is the solution? Where I came from seeing that
see the whole picture more,
there's a much bigger picture going on here, because otherwise they're somehow connected here. So don't just stare at that. You have to see it from a big, and also since I've seen hundreds of people dead around JFK and Robert Kennedy and Martin Luther King, There's so many people that have been suicided, died in accidents, witnesses, people involved. I mean, I met one guy that he's a mathematician who did statistics. He said the chances of you dying young, if you had any kind of connection with the JFK assassination, not being part of it, but just knowing something or being married to someone or being a witness of any, was 1 trillion higher than an ordinary person. So it's not to be paranoid to say that I have been in scary areas and I'm living in it. So that is
How
not
can you
being
protect yourself?
that is a good question. I've got the only protection I have is not to have protection. I stand like this.
You come out and tell
I
everything
do
you know.
not hide.
Okay.
My address, my home address is on my website. If you want to come find me, not difficult. I mean, they can track me. If I can track down assassins, they will find me like this. So I don't use encryption. I don't do anything like that. I stand like this, but in peace, which is a fantastic so-called weapon. I would call it a weapon, but it is a peacemaker. It is a fantastic thing. And if I can give you an example, I love these things. I love them. People say, how can you deal with so much darkness? How can you be in all?
Yeah.
It's not dark at all. It is dark, but it's in the darkness that you see light as well. And you see these beautiful individuals that have proven themselves and are still standing, even though their lives are being destroyed, they're being threatened, their families are leaving them, everybody, and they still stand in truth. I've met so many of them. I mean, you look in the eyes of these individuals, it's like, oh my God. If I succeed or am part of the solution, yeehaw, baby. I mean, what could be better than that? Because the good news is that when you look globally on what's going on in the world, it's such a small little group that is behind so much mayhem. It's a tiny little group that are, it's like an octopus with tentacles in every single important areas of our life. But it's the same head. It's the same head.
Who is it?
Who is it? That's a very good question. When you look at the power pyramid, it's a power structure, pyramid power structure. But there's pyramids inside pyramids inside pyramids inside pyramids, and all of them are compartmentalized, meaning that no one knows the whole thing by design except the people at the top. Who's at the absolute top? I have no idea about. But I do know that it's up until a level where I know I can pinpoint people. The Bilderberg group, super players in this whole thing. Everyone that goes to the Bilderberg group or is invited, and more than once, you cannot trust them at all. They should be tried for treason. They are absolute traitors for the rest of us. The Council on Foreign Relations, exactly the same. The Trilateral Commission, most of these people are members in all three or two or one. Same people, key people in key positions in society. Skull and Bones, Club of Rome, that area. But they are just players down here. There's a whole big shebang on top of it. And we get into very weird, bizarre, Freemasonic, satanic. I mean, I believe in the point up for the light. They are totally involved with the dark forces. So I'm coming to a point almost where I used to believe that the devil and evil was just a concept, but it feels to me more and more that it's a real thing, that it's a real power, and that we're in a spiritual battle where it's about good and bad. And so what we are doing, you, I, many other people, are sort of on a street level, but at the same time there's this higher, the real battle is going up here, and that's the battle of our souls, our minds. Because the good news is that this is where the battle should be fought. Also because these dark forces, the only way they can control us is through fear. That's why they keep having to keep us fearful with all these crap operations, bang, boom, all of these things.
Like
ISIS, Al Qaeda.
False flag operations, right?
False flag is, yeah.
Yeah. What's actually the definition of false flag? Do they have their definition?
Yeah. A false flag is an old naval term, a marine term from the old days when countries like Holland, Great Britain, Spain was just traveling around, raping, plunder, death, and destruction. And they had the military, the gun power to do it. I mean, nobody could stand up against them. They had these armadas of ships that could just go and. But this is the thing: if you're a bully, or if it's sometimes it works against you. There's this blowback. So that could be with trading agreements with neighboring nations and so on. So somebody came up with the idea: instead of us always being the bad boys, why don't we twist it around? We do a psyop here. So what they did, they started a psychological operation where it's the mind, they play around with your mind, which is super important in these areas. So somebody came up with the idea, this nation is the target, or whatever the target was. Let's put that flag, the flag of that nation, on one of our own ships. Then we let our own ship attack us. And then instead of us being the bullies, oh my God, we're under attack. We need to protect ourselves. We need to defend ourselves. Invasion, rape, and plunder. So the exact same thing, but then the rest of the world, so courageous. It's fantastic, isn't it? Look at them. They were attacked and then they managed to do this. So it's like you see the US, for instance, they got more weapon power, than the whole rest of the world together. And then they say, this nation is threatening us. We have to defend ourselves. It's like you take Mike Tyson and you put him into a child, whatever it's called, like a... Yeah, and well, this infant, he puked on my foot. Because of that, I smashed him. Mike Tyson was okay to totally destroy this child. That's the exact thing. And the rest of us are like, just like in Israel, they say, there's this conflict. No, it's not a conflict. It's genocide. There's not, you've got Israel with a military power of like this, funded by the US. I think it's 10 million per day. And then you got Gaza and the Palestinian people blocked in, massive big walls, no clean walls and no nothing. Everything is stopped in there, no weapons, most of them children. And then there's this little firework that comes, boom. And then they say, you attacked us. And I would very much question who fired that thing to start with, boom. And then in with F-16 fighters, bombing the whole thing over and over and over again. And we say, well, it's a conflict. It is not a conflict. And it's a super shame. Shame on us, the rest of the world, that are not doing anything. It's awful. We should be ashamed of ourselves, all of us.
Yeah, that's true. I always ask myself, how do they get away with the lies? How can they manage this? Because nobody's getting it.
We're so brain dead. We're like in a spell. It's like so many are, No, I don't want to talk about these things. It's unpleasant. Let's watch football instead. X Factor, Idol, or Neighbors or whatever. Doom, and get them. Bring on another pizza, and life is good again. But the thing is, it's just down the road. Israel is not that long, and also it's spreading because they're just showing it how they do it. If we don't do anything about it, the whole of Europe is under attack at the moment.
It's getting closer, right?
It's getting closer.
It's already here, actually. Right?
It is, and if I'm correct, we are in a full-scale war, full-spectrum war, but it's a silent war. You don't hear the bombs explode here. You don't feel the body pain on you, but we are being attacked through water, to air with chemtrails, GMOs, with vaccines, with assassinations, with false flag operations, with you name it, taxations of absolutely unjust wars against countries that are totally innocent, absolutely innocent. Anyway, back to the false flag. I'm sorry I take off
No,
like
that's
this.
fine.
The false flags, they started doing that.
Mhm.
Then the pirates thought, that's a good one. So they turned it around. So they came, whatever ship they were going to attack, they put on that flag. So the Spaniards, for instance, they were like that. Oh, there's a ship coming. Well, it's one of ours, so we can just relax. And then they say, oh my God, it's Captain Hook. Too late. And that's it. But this false flag concept has been, I do not know any war in modern times that have not been started with a false flag. Very few. Most of them are false flags. And then it comes out, like 30 years later, well, actually nothing happened. But we just managed to start this massive war because of it. And people are after, well, it's 30 years ago, it's 50, what to do? Well, it's happening now as well. Mm-hmm. So there's these. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you.
Just go ahead.
No, there's specific things that I think is very important to understand, and this is where I normally get shut down on YouTube, Google, all of that. Is they just terminate everything when I've done between 500 and 1,000 interviews about these, and it's very clear when I talk about false flag operations, problem reaction solution, these different tactics, describing them in detail. That is when they shut it down. Interesting. So, because the people in power or whatever is in power are very small. They're very few compared to billions of us. I would say if I know anything, I think they're in the thousands. We are billions. Do you know how many zeros a billion is? That is it's like Bill Gates. There's another nice guy for you. Not. He said somewhere like if he spends 3 million per day, if he stops his income today and he spends 3 million per day, he will still be able to support himself for at least 100 years. That is a billion. So that is quite a lot. And we are many. 8,000 is a joke. It's like a small little town of these individuals, but they're not very nice people. Super psychopaths, super criminals, uh, organized crime,
where are they?
Mass murderers. Sorry?
Are they distributed all over the world?
Yeah, because they like to join up. That's the thing. Because psychopaths do not have compassion, empathy, all of, meaning that they're perfect for their task. They don't care. So for us to point a finger, how can you do this to us? They can, and they do. So, but you say, I would never do that. No, because you're not a psychopathic killer. I had that from CIA whistleblower Chip Tatum because I said, I do not get the mentality behind these things. And he said, the only reason you don't get it is because you're not a psychopathic killer. His words. If you were, this would make perfect sense to you.
Okay, guys, so sorry. I know that was kind of long, and I said I was going to fast forward it. I did a little bit, but it's all really good information, what he's saying. So I just wanted to give you guys, again, to hear it from an expert on these false flags instead of me, and just give you a little bit more information about it. The website that you see on the screen is Ole Dammegard's website. It has a ton of information about false flags and um, just conspiracies, just a lot of information. Some of it is members only videos, but there's a ton of free videos. So I encourage you guys to check it out if you guys have some free time and just go over it and watch some of his videos or listen to some of his podcasts. So that's lightonconspiracies.com, and I will put it in the description after the live. So I want to play a video of mine that I did a while back. For those of you that have seen it, I apologize. You're going to have to watch it again. And for those of you who have not, it'll be the first time. So let me pull that up for you guys. Sorry about that. 1 second. Couple seconds. And forgive me for my robot voice in this video. This is one of my newer videos or older videos. So yeah, just don't mind the robot voice. I apologize for that. Chris Watts made a number of mistakes before and after the murders, which ultimately led to his conviction. Many of the errors could have been avoided with common sense. But what if Chris deliberately made the mistakes because he wanted to get caught? We know that the murders were premeditated, so why did Chris choose the day that Shanann had a doctor's appointment and on Belle and Celeste's first day of school? What if Chris picked that day in order to give Nicole Atkinson the perfect opportunity to call in the welfare check? Why did Chris load the bodies of his family in front of the house and take the risk of someone potentially seeing him? Why didn't he take him out the back where there were no cameras and the houses were unoccupied?
If he took them out the back, Nate's security video of Chris loading the bodies of his family into his truck would be non-existent. Chris knew that if he backed into the driveway, that it would trigger Nate's security camera and it would capture him loading the bodies of his family into his truck. Why would he go through the trouble of faking his family's disappearance after he had already potentially incriminated himself? But if he wanted to push a narrative onto the public, what better way to do it than to let them see it for themselves? However, the video footage doesn't actually show any physical evidence of Chris loading any bodies into his truck, therefore leaving only circumstantial evidence. There was a similar situation with the Las Vegas shooting. The mainstream media pushed the narrative that Stephen Paddock shot out of his 32nd floor hotel room onto concertgoers. However, there was no physical evidence to back up that claim. With only circumstantial evidence, people began to question the official narrative. It wasn't long until the crime-scene photos of Stephen Paddock's deceased body in the hotel room were intentionally leaked in an attempt to further push the official narrative. Many have questioned whether or not Chris actually loaded the bodies of his family into his truck on his own. Dead weight is extremely difficult to lift, and Shanann being pregnant would have made it even more difficult, if not impossible. Chris also never appears to be tired, struggling, or out of breath. Although it does appear that Chris is loading the bodies of his family, the physical evidence just isn't there. Chris disposed of the bodies at an oil site owned by the company he worked for. Had he not confessed, that would have been the first place that investigators would have looked. You have to wonder what Chris was thinking when he left behind 6 pieces of evidence. But what if he deliberately left them there, simply because he was following the narrative?
The home, when law enforcement arrived, was locked up tight from the inside. The only way that the law enforcement could get in was getting Mr. Watts there with a garage door opener to let law enforcement in. There was no way anyone was going to get into that house as a stranger, do something to that family, and get back out and leave the house locked up in that manner. I think that was probably the most compelling thing that struck law enforcement almost immediately.
If there were multiple ways Shanann could have left the house, it would open up the possibility that someone else may have been responsible for their disappearance, therefore taking the focus away from Chris and the official narrative. When investigators started to interrogate him, Chris never asked for a lawyer. He also agreed to take a polygraph test even though he knew he would fail. Some believe that he is so narcissistic that he thought he could actually take the test and pass. But what if it didn't have anything to do with being narcissistic? Chris took a plea deal in order to avoid the death penalty and waived his right to a fair trial. A trial would likely bring up more information that contradicts the official narrative. Quickly closing the case is the best way to avoid anyone questioning any inconsistencies. Many believe Nicole Kessinger played a much bigger role in the murders. However, the reason she was never investigated, why she has never been charged, and most likely will never be charged, is because the official narrative being fed over and over to the public is that Chris Watts killed his family. Why do you think Nicole Kessinger was hardly mentioned in any of the mainstream media documentaries? And the few times she was made out to look like a hero. The predictive programming used in the television show American Horror Story prior to the murders is overwhelming and started as far back as season 1, which aired in 2011. This means that someone had foreknowledge that these murders were going to happen, and ultimately showed us what would later become a real-life American Horror Story for the whole world to see. Why would they do all this? Ole Damigard, an expert on false flags, psyops, and conspiracy theories, explains it best.
They secretly create an alleged terror attack or alleged mass shooting, alleged virus attack, alleged final crash, financial crash, something like that. Right. They create the problem. The reason they create that is to get us into an emotional reaction. So they freak us out so that we will be, oh my God. There's a difference between reacting and acting. Acting is when you're in balance and harmony and you make a well thought through decision and then you act. Reaction is just you go, oh my God, and that. But they don't want you to think. So it's the reaction they want and emotional. So they aim at women and children to get the emotions going. Yeah. So see the problem to get the reaction. That's problem, reaction. Oh my God, help us. That's the reaction they want. And then we turn towards the few, to the ones that we think are there to protect us. not understanding that it's actually them who have created the problem, and say, please, please help us, we need protection. And they will let it say, well, the only way we can protect you is by, and boom, in comes the solution. Problem, solution.
This case has brought fear and panic into women all over the world who feel they can no longer trust their husband or significant other to protect their family. If women can no longer trust their husband or significant other to protect their family, then who can they trust?
Okay, so I just wanted to show you guys that video again because it has a lot to do with what I've been trying to show and tell everybody. Just that all the coincidences and and all the mistakes that Chris made that should have been easily avoided, and anyone with common sense or logic would know not to leave all these items at where you take the bodies, or loading the bodies right in front of your house for any of the neighbors to see, etc. So again, for those of you who have already seen that video, I apologize, but I wanted to play it again. And now I'm going to go straight into just a little something as far as all the theories going around. So I noticed that it seems that a lot of times there seems to be theories that are dismissed quicker than other theories, and I guess what I want to know is, why are some theories more believable than others, and why are some so easily ridiculed and quickly dismissed? For example, why are some so quick to dismiss the theory that the Watts case could possibly be a staged event, orchestrated by our government, who is well known to be corrupt, in order to push an agenda or agendas? And why is it more possible that someone like Chris Watts could be capable of murdering his entire family? A man that was portrayed to us as a loving father, a great husband, and who showed no previous violent tendencies or behaviors. And why is Chris Watts killing his entire family, even though he doesn't fit the profile, more believable than Chris Watts pretending to be a murderer in order to fool the public to push an agenda or agendas? Why is it easier to believe that a woman who, as far as we know, is only guilty of sleeping with a married man and lying to police, capable of either being an accomplice to murder or committing the actual murders herself? Why is accusing a woman of murder more believable or plausible than the possibility of this woman not being who we've been told she is and might actually only be guilty of pretending to be a mistress and lying to the public in order to, again, push an agenda or agendas? And why is it plausible that everyone involved is in some sort of satanic cult and are part of a massive cover-up with law enforcement? And why is it so unbelievable that the government is so corrupt and capable of covering up not unbelievable. Why is it more believable that the government is so corrupt and capable of covering up a quadruple homicide case, but ridiculous to think that the government might actually be capable of lying about a quadruple homicide case in order to push, again, an agenda or multiple agendas? Now, I'm not saying that the theories just mentioned are not possible, because almost anything is possible this day and age. But that's why it's so important to keep an open mind, no matter how ridiculous it might sound. And in order to find the truth, one can't be biased or confuse emotions with facts. For example, successful investigators are able to think outside the box when necessary and look at all possibilities without letting their emotions or feelings get in the way. Having an open mind and being able to push their emotions aside prevents investigators from missing valuable evidence that they may have missed if they had let their feelings get in the way. So in order to find these answers, blocking out the emotions is essential. And this means any hatred towards potential suspects or accomplices, and empathy towards the victims or the victims' families. And one can't be so quick to rule out other theories simply because it's not the outcome of their choice. Why do people refuse to believe something even when they are presented with facts? Cognitive dissonance will play a big role in allowing a person to see the truth. Because when a person strongly believes in something and their belief is challenged, they usually will make up excuses or find other reasons in order to support their own belief and kind of bring a balance to that, if that makes sense. And in order to find the truth, you have to find a way to just, like I said, put your emotions aside, because unfortunately, people are not always what they appear to be, and especially when they're presented by the mainstream media and our government, unfortunately. And in my opinion, almost everything we've been told about the Watts case has been a lie. And they literally, like I said in my video, they put on a real life American Horror Story, and we all had front row seats. And the predictive programming proves that, more than proves that. And all the information was put there for a reason, because they were telling us a story. So each event was there to corroborate the other event. And what I mean by that is, if you guys have heard me say before that everything they put in the discovery is there for a reason, or they only show us what they want us to see or what they want us to know. So since they're telling a story, like I said, everything that was presented to us, or a lot of it, was to validate the previous event. So, for example, in the discovery, we saw the emails between Chris and Kessinger. They showed us that because it validates the fact that there was an affair going on in the first place. And all this is going to be so that I don't have to say conveniently every time, or what a convenience. And the Unmasked channel talked about this in one of their videos. I think one of their Kessinger videos. But they bring up that how convenient and coincidental everything is in the case, and they're right. So you have the emails between Chris and Kessinger at work, which shows us that the affair was established, or how it was established. Then you have, and I might miss some, I just threw these notes down fairly quickly, but you'll get the general idea of what I'm saying. Then you have Shanann, who conveniently leaves for North Carolina for 6 weeks, which conveniently gives Chris and Kessinger time to build their affair and have their affair. Then Shanann gets back from Colorado, or no, I'm sorry, not from Colorado, from North Carolina, and the day of, conveniently, gets the ultrasound just days before she's allegedly murdered. And this validates that she's having a boy, as the narrative states. Then you have Shanann complaining to the girls in Arizona about how sick she feels, and how her and Chris are fighting, and just problems with the marriage, and she's not feeling well. And then in the video that I just played, you have Chris, who, stupidly enough, decides to murder his family on a day where his wife has a doctor's appointment, and his kids are supposed to go to school that day. It's their first day of school. So you can see where all this conveniently just ties into one another. It's all convenient. Because why would anybody pick a day where multiple people are going to notice that Shanann's missing? So, as I said again in my video, did Chris do this, or did they have this happen so that it would give Nicole Atkinson the perfect opportunity to call on the welfare check? So what I'm trying to say is, everything in this case happens happened for a reason. Like, and and we don't see, like I said in my last slide, we don't see a anything before or in between or after. It's just everything just fits perfectly, if that makes sense. Okay, so yeah, so Shanann is complaining about being sick, and then it worries Nicole Atkinson, who calls in, and I don't know, this has been back and forth. I don't know if she really called at 9 or 12:30. Someone can probably clarify that for me. But either way, I mean, she's still, God forbid, she's just came back. She's pregnant. She just flew back from Arizona. God forbid she sleeps in the next day, and because she's depressed or whatever from having marital problems, and she wasn't feeling well. So the fact that Nicole Atkinson called that quickly for a welfare check is pretty crazy. And normally you have to be, with a welfare check, you have to be, pretty certain that there's something, or have a good reason for calling the police to come and take the time to come out to check on someone. So I'm really surprised that they actually came out knowing that it's only been a few hours from the last time that she had seen Shanann or talked to Shanann. Especially since she didn't get home until 1:40 in the morning, almost 2 in the morning. So then you have the welfare check, and then you have what's next? Well, then you have Chris, who meets in the Safeway parking lot with his coworker, and he just conveniently happens to be in the right place at the right time when the phone call is made about the leak, and Chris just happens to overhear it so that he can go to Survey on Monday to dispose of his kids. Do you see how everything's just so convenient in all of this? So everything, like I said, I'm having a difficult time trying to explain it, but so everything corroborates the other, or validates the event before. So they're literally telling us the story. And then you have Chris, making all those stupid mistakes, moving the bodies in front of the house, leaving all the evidence at the site, and then you have Nate's camera just happens to be set up. I mean, that's one of the biggest ones. Nate's camera was just happened to be positioned right on the driveway, whatever excuse they said, because Chris's truck was getting broken into. That's part of the story. That's to validate the fact that why Nate's camera was pointed at Chris's driveway. Do you see what I'm saying? So everything is just too convenient in this case. Or trying to think of another one. Okay, so in my video I brought up how Rourke is talking about how there was no way for Shanann to, other than the garage, for her to get out of that house. That's because the official narrative is that Chris killed his kids, and that's the narrative that they, pushed into our heads over and over and over. He was the only one that did it, and that's it. So if they would have gave multiple ways for Shanann to leave, that would have opened up more opportunities for someone to have been involved, and that would go against the official narrative. So the reason why Rourke, I believe, makes that a point to say that nobody else could have gone in or out except for through the garage is because they don't want anybody to think that there's any accomplices, because the official narrative is that Chris killed his kids and his wife and nobody else. And if you look at it this way, it like really starts to make a lot of sense. Or, you know, why would he take his family and dump the bodies at his place of work when any real investigators or department is going to, that's going to be the first thing they're going to check is his GPS. They didn't need Chris to tell them where the girls were, or Shanann. They should have figured that out the first day. So Chris taking the bodies to his place of work and leaving all this stuff behind, all this evidence, is to, again, because it's following the narrative and it points to nobody else but him. So there's no other way, or it doesn't point to anybody else but Chris. So based on circumstantial evidence, they could get away with that based on circumstantial, because everything points to Chris. How conveniently, right? So, yeah, sooner or later, if they were actually doing real investigative work, they would have and flew a drone over the first day, or took cadaver dogs out there, real cadaver dogs, or not real, but maybe real handlers that did what they were supposed to do. They would have seen the disturbed dirt and they would have found Shanann's body. So again, it's all about convenience, you know. And everything that they show us in the discovery and on the body cam footage, it's all to validate what happens next. So I guess Stephanie, I don't know if it's Herb or Herb, she was kind enough to fill me in that it's, I guess in storytelling or story writing, it'd be called foreshadowing. So if you look at it in a story standpoint, that's essentially what they're doing. They're telling us a story. And everything in a story always fits just perfect. Just like in the Watts case. And so another example would be how Chris didn't ask for a lawyer and how he just confessed after 4 hours. Like, he's going to go through all that trouble just to confess, and then that's it. And then why he would take the polygraph test. They didn't want people to think that anybody else was involved. I know I keep saying that, but that's why Chris made so many stupid mistakes, and that any logical person would know not to make. And that's why they didn't investigate Kessinger, and that's why they made up some BS excuse that they didn't have the equipment to do physical extractions on her cell phone or any of the cell phones, knowing full well that the only way you can get deleted text messages off of phones is if you do in mobile forensics, is if you do a physical extraction on a phone. So they put this BS excuse in to the discovery thinking that nobody's going to notice except, I noticed, and I'm sure other people noticed. And when you have a quadruple homicide case, high profile case, you're gonna as a FBI or whoever, you're gonna find a way to get that equipment one way or another so that you can get those deleted text messages, especially after they said how important it was and kept reiterating how important it was to get those deleted text messages of Kissinger's. Well, they're full of shit. Because one, they could have, a 10-year-old in his mom's basement could have recovered her text messages because she didn't delete the entire contents of her phone. She only deleted what was ever between her and Chris. So that means that she didn't do a factory reset on her phone, and she didn't use any, bleaching or whatever like that Hillary Clinton used. No, she didn't wipe her phone. And when you delete text messages, just so y'all know, they're still there for a while. And yes, I cursed, share, because it makes me angry sometimes. But when you delete text messages or information, it stays in the unallocated space in your phone until the phone needs to make room for more data or more information coming in. So the fact that Kissinger only deleted them just a couple days prior to them doing the mobile forensics on her phone, they were more than likely more. Actually, I know they still would have been there because you wouldn't be able to use that much data within a couple days. And there are multiple ways to recover deleted text messages through Google, which would be synced, which when asked if she could remember her Google password, she said, "No, I can't. I don't know how to do this stuff." And so instead of Matt Saylor, their supposedly IT guy, he says, "Oh, okay, that's okay. Well, we can try something else. No, how about, okay, go in and say, I forgot my password and reset your password, and then we'll go from there." No, he just laughed and said, "Ha, okay, that's okay." I mean, like, literally, they could have recovered her text messages. And the reason why they didn't, and they made up some excuse, is because it wasn't about her. It was about Chris. Like, Kissinger was just a part of it. She was just a part of the story. So for them to say in the discovery that they didn't have the equipment to perform physical extractions on these phones is, again, BS. And if you're law enforcement, you can find a way to find those. And you don't even have to be in law enforcement. You can find this software and these machines that they use to do mobile forensics. You can get it on third-party websites. You can even get them on eBay. So that's the reason why none of Kissinger's text messages were recovered. Because in the discovery, it'll say that they used three different mobile forensic software on her phone. So they used Celebrite, Axum, and I'm going to forget. Celebrate, Axum. It'll come to me, but I forgot it. And one more. And the problem with that is that they all used advanced logical extraction techniques on that. And again, they know full well that you have to do a physical extraction in order to get deleted text messages off of phones. The reason why they got her search history is because search history from the internet, it doesn't go into the unallocated space. So you only have to do an advanced logical or just a logical extraction to get her search history. Whereas in the deleted text messages, you have to do a physical extraction. So that's why there's no investigating Kessinger, because she wasn't the narrative that they were trying to push. She was just a part of it, if that makes sense. And another way they could have extracted her text messages were through the cloud. And Matt Saylor even mentioned something, or Kobach mentioned something about her having her cloud turned on. So they didn't even have to use Celebrite and all these, and Axiom and all these other forensic whatever, because she also gave them her passcode. Now with Apple, if you don't have the passcode and it has some sort of security on it and it's locked, it's nowadays they've been able to get into iPhones easier, but it would have been a lot more difficult to get those deleted text messages off of Kessinger's phone. But she willingly gave them her passcode, which is even more crazy that they would even admit that, because their whole excuse is just ridiculous. And I've even researched it, and I know that they are spending money, the CBI is spending money for that forensic mobile software. So they're spending money on it each year. So the fact that they can't afford one is also BS. And if it's a quadruple homicide case, you're gonna find it, no matter what. And the fact that they even let her go home with her phone after that first interview with her dad is even crazier, because they ran the Axum mobile forensics on her phone and then gave her phone back to her so that, I mean, why? So that she can go and use more data, so that they potentially, or it overwrites her other deleted data, or so that she can figure out how to wipe more stuff from her phone. Like, that's crazy to me that they would even give her phone back to her. And then she doesn't even come back in and bring her phone in again until August 23rd or September 23rd, one or the other, either way. So she had her phone for a couple of weeks until they asked her to come in again, and so they could perform the Celebrite software on her phone. I'm just going to read the chat here. Take a break from my rant for a minute. And that's also why they are most likely never going to release her phone data dump. Even if you Cora request it, they're going to say that it's that stupid excuse that I always forget, not deemed whatever for the public interest. They use that for almost everything. And Chica, yeah, no, I've heard that. She is an adult. Kessinger's an adult, so the only time you would have a parent there is if you were underage. Or her dad happens to be her lawyer. And Kobach even said in the beginning, he said, "You're not being treated as a suspect. You're not being interrogated. You and your father can get up at any point in this interview if you don't want to keep continuing on with it. So you're more than welcome to get up and leave." So when Kobach started to go to that hypothetical question, as in, what happens if, yada yada, and her dad says, "Oh, wait, Nick, don't go there." And Kobach cowers like a little puppy dog in the corner. They're not in a courtroom last time I checked. So I don't know why Mr. Kessinger was acting all lawyerish and saying, "I object," and overruled, because as Kobach said, they were free to go if they didn't like the way that the interview was going. And last time I checked, they said that Kessinger wasn't on the witness stand or being interrogated. So the fact that he was able to just control that entire conversation is beyond me. Yes, stop bleeding, Chica says. And you'll find that in a lot of these like orchestrated staged events, false flags, there's going to be so many inconsistencies and so many holes and so many discrepancies. It's a common characteristic of these. And again, we're left with more questions than we are answers. And with the amount of information, which is not a lot, but the amount of information that they did provide to us, we should not be sitting here asking all these questions still, trying to figure out these answers. Sorry, my boyfriend was talking to me. Desiree, what time did I start? I started an hour and a half ago. Sorry, guys. I saw questions about her ultrasound that Shanann had. The ultrasound that she had on the 8th, I believe, was it. I don't know the technical term for it, but it's the one where it's invasive and they have to go in with a pretty big syringe. It's for to test for like Down syndrome and other conditions like that. And as far as I know, what I researched, if you're on a high risk, if you're a high risk pregnancy, I don't believe that they would recommend doing that test. And I know that Shanann said that she was a high risk pregnancy, so um, I don't know a lot of stuff, a lot about that stuff. But as far as I know, that's the test where they have to go in and draw blood or something from the baby, or one of you ladies in the chat might be able to help me out with that. But I know that it can be quite risky and it is invasive, so it's not, done externally. Yeah, pound it down till there's nothing left. Daddy K. Patricia Jackson says. Oh, I still can't believe when Kessinger says, or she gets done after her YYY thing, and they're so little. And Kovacs, says, "Oh well, we can stop if you want. We don't. Do you want to stop?" And she goes, "No, no, no. We're just getting to the meat of everything. No, let's continue. Like to the meat of everything. Like who says that? That was just a completely bizarre comment that I've heard in a long time. We're just getting to the meat of the story. The story. Well, I guess if she said that, she was right about that. Yes, Stephanie Michelle. Yeah, that's odd because Hazel Heckers is actually a victims advocate for people that have been um, victims of identity theft. So she's a victims advocate for identity theft victims, not for victims or witnesses or in homicide cases. Maybe it's works the same way because they're all victims in some sort of way, but Hazel Hecker's her main area is um, identity theft. Oh, and I wanted to bring that up too. Stephanie Michelle, her comment says something. She says, Sandy wrote a letter saying they were in oil. I thought she said a dream. Um, there's several instances in this case where somehow, I guess maybe they're all intuitive, a lot of intuitive people in this case are involved in this case. But you have Sandy, who is on the phone with one of the officers, and she says that she believes that Chris is acting strange and that she thinks that, or she knows or thinks, I don't remember exactly, that Chris is going to take the bodies and pour oil on them. And then you have NA, Nicole Atkinson, during her interview at the police station, she out of actually nowhere, it was just kind of just, she just kind of shouted it out. And she says, well, if Chris did kill Shanann, then he would definitely strangle her. I mean, that's just a really odd statement to make, in my opinion. So you have Sandy, who knew that Chris was going to pour oil on it. You have Nicole Atkinson, who knew that Chris was going to strangle Shanann. And then you have the Lindstrom boy, when McKenna Lindstrom was being interviewed, and he says that he can picture the bodies in a hole, or them being in a hole. And we know that Shanann was buried in the ground. So we have 3 different times when people predicted that what was going to happen in the case. Like, that's not by accident. I mean, especially Sandy's like, why would she out of nowhere say, I believe that my son-in-law, who I've said nothing about, good things about, and was happy that he married my daughter, and he was such a great son-in-law, and he's such a great husband, such a great dad, and then boom, all of a sudden it's, he's acting weird, I think he's going to pour oil on the kids. Like, that's not a normal comment that someone makes after they just got done praising the guy, her son-in-law. Like, everyone was real quick. Everyone was all about how, great Chris was, and he's so nice, and he never hurt a fly, and he's a great employee. And but then all of a sudden, all these people that just got done saying how great of a person and a dad and a husband he was, an all-around good guy, they were real quick to, change their minds and say that they knew right away that he did it. And Frankie said on Dr. Phil, he said, "Oh, we knew right away. We knew right away when he backed his truck into the garage, that into the driveway, that he was guilty. We knew it." Well, that's funny because you just got done saying that he was, how amazing he was, and so it's really strange that they would all of a sudden just change their minds about something that they seem so sure of. And yes, Chica makes a good point. She said the fact that they said that Cece still had a diaper on. Oh, I forgot I can do this. Hold on. Sorry, I get all wrapped up and I forget I can do all these comment things. Let's see if I can find it. She said the fact that they said Cece still had a diaper on when found is absolutely impossible. Sitting in oil for 2 days would be nothing left of the diaper. And I agree. And if there was anything left, I highly doubt that it would still be connected to her. Yeah, I was told by other mothers that they've washed their baby's diapers like accidentally in the washing machine, and they were nothing but mush. So for Cece's pull-up to still be on her in crude oil for 2-3 days, I would think highly unlikely. And it's really odd too. And there's several people that have pointed this out, on Reddit and comments, but they noticed that a lot of Shanann's text messages and maybe Facebook posts, a lot of them were in reference to death. So, and I know that we say that stuff too, like, oh, he's gonna kill me if I don't come home on time, or da 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 da. But apparently there was a number of them. So one instance was when it was a Facebook post actually, and Shanann says that she recorded Chris without him knowing, and then said that he's gonna kill me if when he sees this when I post it on Facebook. And then there was several references to negative things as far as her dying, or references to her being hurt or something in her text messages to her friends, which is bizarre as well. And I'm still looking for a definitive answer on this, but I've said it before and I'll say it again. They don't release personal information of victims and witnesses in murder cases unless the victim is dead, or the suspect, or it's the suspect and he's dead. Like, they might release his name, obviously, but they're not going to release his social security number unless he's deceased. And they didn't even bother to redact Chris's social security number in the discovery. And especially with minors, like if you go and you look at the Columbine shooting discovery or police report, everything is redacted in there except for the shooters. And obviously names of police officers. But all the kids' names are redacted. The parents of the kids' names are redacted. It's all black, 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 black. When the discovery was released for the Watts case, nothing was redacted until months later when they started redacting more stuff, which is bizarre. And it doesn't make sense, because why redact it, later? Everybody's already seen the information, so what's the point of that? And usually the only way, as far as I know, that they can get away with releasing neighbors' personal information, going inside their homes and showing the layout of their home, and whether they have security cameras or not, and how long her husband's in the basement for every single day, for how many hours. The only way that, or releasing Nicholas Atkinson's driver's license information, his name, his, all this stuff. Like, the only way that they can normally do that is if that information is not real, if they're made up. Because legally you cannot release personal information of people, regardless if it went to trial or if the trial's over. It doesn't matter. Like, that's illegal. And there's a certain someone that decided they wanted to try and call me out for being a liar. I'm not sure what that was all about, but I just like to clarify that I never said that they don't release body cam footage ever. And I never said that they don't release or not. I never said that they don't. That the Watts case is the only one where they released body cam footage, and the only one where they showed, minors' faces. No, it's the only one where they released everybody's information and minors, personal information, in a homicide case. So you're going to see, body cam footage all over the place. We know that. I mean, I made a video of a shooting, that case that work was involved with. So I just wanted to clarify that I never said that it was just the Watts case that they released the body cam footage in, because that's just absolutely ridiculous. So I just want to get that out of the way. But I'm going to try to keep it under 2 hours, and I'm going to get something to eat. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to go. I've been going back and watching the lives again, or at least scrolling through the comments. And any questions that people have, I've been writing them down so that I can do a live and, excuse me, try to answer some of the questions that people have been asking that I've been unable to see because I'm doing the live, and I just try to get through it. So please don't think if I don't think I'm ignoring any of you if I don't answer your questions. It's like I said, I just try to get through these lives without any technical difficulties and mishaps. So yeah, so I've been going through the live chats and just writing down people's questions, and I'm going to hopefully do a live and answer some of those questions for you guys that I wasn't able to answer in the first place. All right, everybody, have a good night and stay safe. Thank you, everyone, for being here and for your support.